Hey everybody, welcome to Vice Grip Garage. Today I'm going to be your host because Derek is out of town for a few days, and my going to town rig has a ton of issues that need to be addressed right away.
Ton of issues that need to be addressed right away. Something shocking has happened to Derek Bieri's fancy life from Vice Grip Garage, and nothing will ever be the same again. Jessica, his wife, who once kept everything running smoothly behind the scenes, is stepping away, leaving everyone puzzled. Let us dive deeper. Cover the shocking reason Jessica finally decided she couldn't take it anymore, the woman behind the wrench. Back in the day, Derek's world was one big adventure. Cars were not just a hobby, they were the lifeblood of everything he did. From wrestling and football in his younger years to wrenching on old beaters until they screamed back to life. He had one mission: find them, fix them, and hit the road. Little did Derek know, the road ahead would shatter everything he thought he knew about the ride. Jessica Bieri, the woman who kept the gears turning behind the scenes, had her own journey. She was not just the woman standing next to him in the background of Vice Grip Garage. She was the brains behind the business, the glue that held everything together. Her role was everything: organizing schedules, managing events, making sure Derek stayed on track. Without her, the whole operation might have run off the rails long ago. Their love story started way back in middle school, but she was not exactly swooning over him at first. He was the class clown, always cracking jokes and making a scene, and she was not having any of it. But Derek was not one to give up easy. He kept at it, and eventually things took a turn. Welcome back to Vice Grip Lodge. We're sorry it's taken so long, but we're finally going to answer the most commonly asked question ever in the history of Vice Grip Garage. Years later, they found themselves side by side, not just as husband and wife, but as business partners, raising 3 children, building a brand, and keeping a collection of classic cars alive. Speaking of cars, Jessica had her own, a 1991 Geo Prism named Casper. It was not flashy, but it was hers, and it became part of their early adventures. Derek, in true Derek fashion, took Casper for a joyride to Nevada, thinking he would push it to its limits on the salt flats. That did not go as planned. The old car gave up, ending up on the back of a flatbed, limping home in disgrace. But that is the thing about these two. They never saw failure as the end. Just another lesson learned the hard way. Jessica was not just tagging along for the ride. She was part of the build, part of the story, part of the reason Vice Grip Garage ever became a thing. While Derek was in front of the camera, she was making sure the business stayed upright, making the tough calls, handling the merchandise, marketing, and all the other details no one ever saw. Hey, welcome back to Vice Grip Lodge. I've got some really exciting news to share with you fellas. Today, we're adding on to Vice Grip Garage here, that's right. We're going to be doubling the size of this pole barn. She was a teacher before all of this, balancing work, family, and the ever-growing business they had created. But eventually, something had to give. The question is what? What changed? What pulled her away from the spotlight? One minute she was helping build a legacy, and the next she was slipping into the background. Maybe it was the endless hours, the constant travel, or the stress of balancing it all. Maybe it was just time for a new chapter. Either way, the adventure took a turn, and people cannot help but wonder why. Jessica had always been the backbone of it all. She kept the family running, the business moving, and Derek from running himself into the ground. But while he continued to shine in front of the cameras, the woman who had helped build it all was stepping further and further out of frame. There was a time when they were inseparable. Rolling down highways together, picking up forgotten relics and breathing life back into them. But as the years went on, that excitement seemed to fade. The long nights, the constant moving, the never-ending grind. It all takes a toll. And maybe, just maybe, Jessica had finally hit her limit. Derek still had the passion, still loved the hunt. But Jessica's role had shifted. It was not about the spotlight or the fame for her. It was about the journey, the shared dream. And when that dream started feeling more like a job, more like a weight pressing down on her shoulders, something had to change. Maybe the road that had once felt wide open now felt a little too long, a little too exhausting. she still had her favorites, a 2007 Cadillac Escalade, always throwing check engine lights, but still getting the job done. A 1960 El Camino. She never liked it first but grew to love. The 1969 Camaro that had stolen a piece of her heart, and the farm truck, the one vehicle that carried more memories than any of the others combined. These cars were not just metal and rubber to her. They were pieces of their history, markers of where they had been and what they had built together. But something changed. The road trip started feeling different. The thrill of the chase was not as exciting anymore. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the business growing too big. Or maybe it was just time for something new. Whatever it was, Jessica slowly stepped back, letting Derek take the lead while she faded into the background. Some cars fight to stay dead, but with enough work, they can hit the road again. Lost Cause is not on my watch. Vice Grip Garage is where forgotten cars get a second shot at life. Some of his rescues seem downright impossible, but with some elbow grease and a whole lot of know-how, he gets them running again. A 1968 Buick LaserBur sat around for 4 years, and time was not kind. The fuel system completely ruined, every line corroded, the tank full of gunk, and the carburetor might as well have been a paperweight. Derek Bieri tore into it, swapping out bad parts, cleaning everything up, and making sure the fuel flowed like it was supposed to. He did not stop there. The car's old vinyl top was long gone, so he slapped it in a poor man's vinyl top that brought the whole look together. By the end, that Buick was back on the road like it had never been abandoned. Then there was a Daihatsu Pantera with electrical problems and missing parts. A lot of folks would have walked away, but not Derek Bieri. He broke out the multimeter and started hunting down every bad wire, missing fuse, and loose connection. Bit by bit, the car came back together. Thetakiwe, if you want to fix a classic, you better know how to chase down electrical problems because they will mess with you every step of the way. One of the biggest rescues was a 1972 Chevrolet Chevelle named Independence. This thing was a disaster when he found it. Rust everywhere, floor barely hanging on, panels beaten up, and an engine that looked like it had given up ages ago. But where most people saw lost cause, Derek Bieri saw a challenge. He got to work cutting out the rust, patching metal, and rebuilding the body. Then he turned to the engine, waking it up from its long nap. By the time he was done, that Chevelle was not just running, it was a beast on wheels. Then came a Cadillac DeVille that had been sitting for over 20 years. It was not just a project. It was a full-blown mission. The engine was dead. The interior was trashed and the wiring was a nightmare. Hey, welcome to Vice Grip Garage. We're packing up our 1970 Cadillac sedan DeVille for a 2,000 miles road trip. Derek Bieri dove in, reviving the motor, fixing up the interior with period-correct materials and chasing down every last electrical issue. This is about those kinds of problems. The tough stuff you don't always see on camera. When do you sleep? When do you eat? How are you taking care of yourself? And it's good to see that people are starting to realize that we're not here for a short time. We're going to try to be here for a long time. But it's a lot of input to make this happen. Let's expose the devastating details that are probably a big part of Derek Bieri's story, too. When fun turns into a job you can't escape, it was kind of hard to spot at first. Those little signs that maybe the super fast pace was getting to him. Maybe he missed putting up a video one week, or the show seemed a bit shorter, or he'd joke about being tired, but you weren't sure if he was really joking. Derek was still there, still smiling for the camera, still wrestling with those stubborn old cars. But if you were a real fan, one of those folks who watched every single video and paid attention, you might have noticed something a little off. Maybe his eyes didn't have that same spark, like he was tired deep down, a tire that even the brightest shop lights couldn't hide. He was running low on something important, not his skills. He still got those and not his want to. But maybe he was just out of time or out of energy. Or maybe both. Could have a six-banger in it. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Then ask questions. See if we can figure out what kind of a mess we're in. Then he made that big move from way up in cold Minnesota down to sunny Tennessee. Now, If you just look at it on paper, it seems like a good idea, right? Better weather means he can work on cars all year. No more freezing his nuts off. And yeah, that's all true. But maybe the real reason he moved, the thing he wasn't shouting about, was something bigger. Maybe Tennessee wasn't just about getting away from the snow. Maybe it was about needing to just breathe for a minute to slow down before he burned out completely. He needed to find a way to keep doing this thing that had turned into a monster job. Think about it. Finding the cars, dragging them home, which is a job in itself, figuring out what's wrong with them, hunting down old parts that nobody makes anymore, filming everything, editing it all, talking to all the fans online, and then starting all over again week after week. That kind of pressure could suck the life out of anyone. He was pretty clearly burned out. Not the kind where you have a big meltdown, but that sneaky kind of tire that gets into your bones after you've been pushing too hard for too long. The kind of tire that doesn't yell at you, it just hangs around making everything feel heavy. Derek had spent so much time and energy fixing everything else, bringing all those dead cars back to life, that he kind of forgot to check on his own engine. And when he finally did, what he found inside, maybe just a whole lot of empty, was probably scarier than any seized-up motor or rotted-out frame he'd ever seen. This wasn't a car problem he could fix with a wrench. This was a him problem. And that devastating detail, the fact that the man himself was running on fumes, that's a tough one. During this time, things got a bit strange. Some folks thought he'd put up odd posts online or his updates would be all over the place. If I do lack in content, I want people to understand why and just be raw about it that I'm tired. I just mentally, physically trying to understand what's happening. Fans of course started guessing what was wrong. But Derek, he's not really the type to spill all his secrets. He was trying to hide things. Not really. He was just being careful about what parts of his story he wanted to share with millions of strangers. And you can't blame him for that. But it just shows how tough it is to live your life so out in the open. When every little thing you do, every mistake, every win, every rusty car part is up for everyone to see and talk about, it's hard to know where the real you stops and the YouTube you begins. That line gets blurry and always having to be on. That can be a devastating kind of pressure all by itself. A frozen fight or just more content. Even when he was fighting that burnout, the work didn't just stop. He still had projects. He still had ideas, but you could tell the way he was doing things had changed a bit. It wasn't slower exactly, but maybe he was thinking more, being more careful. It felt like Derek wasn't just trying to feed the YouTube beast anymore. He was trying to get back to why he started doing this in the first place, fixing what needed fixing, not just in the shop, but maybe inside himself, too. Every job had to mean something again. Every bolt he turned had to feel important. Every video needed to feel like he was really connecting with people, not just selling them something. Then along came that Mustang, a 1979 Fox body, frozen solid, a car that hadn't made a peep in decades. It was buried under snow and rust, full of doubt. Just the kind of impossible job that Vice Grip Garage is famous for. Where I've purchased sight unseen this 1979 Fox body Mustang. Of course, it doesn't run and it's been off the road for 23 years. So, I'm going to try to get this thing fired up. He dragged it out of that barn like a man on a mission. Snow was biting at his hands. Ice was stuck to everything, but he just kept going. This wasn't just another car he was trying to save. It felt like he was fighting for something, making a statement. He had one day, just one shot, with a big snowstorm rolling in and his tools so cold they probably barely worked. The clock was ticking, laughing at him. He went at it like a madman, ripping out old wires, putting in what he could, trying to get the fuel system to work again, fighting with frozen spark plugs, busting his knuckles in the freezing cold, and when that engine finally coughed, then sputtered, and then let out a real roar. It wasn't just a win for the car. It was like a message from Derek himself. Vice Grip Garage was still here, still tough, still kicking. That Mustang job done in the worst possible weather showed how stubborn and skilled he is. But it also makes you think about the crazy pressure he puts on himself. What if he hadn't gotten it started? Stuck in a blizzard with a dead car? That would have been a disaster. A real kick in the teeth.